Okay, Mike Thompson is standing by. If we can speak with him now about just his, hello, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I didn't know if you were already keyed up, and you are, and we appreciate that you're here. Just your reaction to what we've all been talking about tonight, this latest tragedy in California.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. I just wish the circumstances were different. This is just another tragedy, and it breaks all of our hearts, and our thoughts and our prayers go out to the family members of the victims and those who survived. And it's just one more example as to why we have to do more to stop this sort of senseless gun violence. And as your interview with my colleague and my dear friend Anna issued just a minute ago, Anna explained how we passed a good bill in the House that went over to the Senate. They couldn't pass that bill. They sent a bill back over to us that we passed that became law, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which is a good bill. It did some great things. It closed the boyfriend loophole, made it more difficult for people under a certain age to get firearms. It provided funding for programs that are designed to keep the community safe, and some mental health funding. This is all well and good, but we still have more work to do.
Congressman, I see the duck decoys behind you. I assume you're a duck hunter, or you were at some point. Is that true?
Well, I am a duck hunter. I'm a gun owner. I'm a hunter, and I carried an assault weapon, if you will, for a tour of duty in Vietnam, and I'm the chairman of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force.
Which leads me to the question of, we like to put everybody in a box, ideologically of where they stand on certain issues, and there are plenty of gun owners who support the idea of responsible gun ownership and keeping guns away from bad people. There are other gun owners who feel like it's a fundamental black and white, you should be able to have a gun. It's in the Constitution, the Second Amendment, and that's the end of the conversation. So is there a way to bridge that gap?
Well, there is, and we've done some good work in that regard, as I mentioned. I've carried legislation since Sandy Hook that would expand background checks. I'm of the belief, as you state, that we do have a right to own a firearm, but with that right comes certain responsibilities. And there's some people who are a danger to themselves or to others who shouldn't be able to get anywhere near a gun. And unless you can provide background checks before someone buys a gun, you're at a loss in being able to prevent those people from getting a hold of a gun. So that's one thing that we could do that would help a great deal. California has some of the strictest laws in the country, and as a result, we have some of the lowest gun violence numbers in the country. And what happened over the course of the last 2 days is a little out of character, and I think it is important to remember that there's always going to be gun violence. There's going to be violence, and some people are going to use guns. But as a public elected official, I believe I need to do everything I can to minimize that and to provide safe communities for my grandkids, your children, other people's children and grandkids. Schools should be safe. I have one son that's a cop. I don't want him dealing with these people who shouldn't have guns. And as you said, I am a gun owner who believes that we have a responsibility to make sure that we do everything we can so that people who have guns use them and handle them responsibly.
So how do we turn the tide, Congressman? We've been talking about this for years now, of course, and you have made some progress in terms of trying to have more regulation and better safeguards, but nonetheless, we continue to see this happen, and more needs to be done. How do you convince those who are against it, who are the lawmakers that you see in Washington all the time against it? How do you begin to convince them to see this issue differently?
Well, it's going to be the voters that finally determine. We need to make sure, voters need to make sure that the people they send, they elect to serve in public office are interested in good public policy that keeps people safe, not on how many hits they can get on their social media or how outrageous they can become to raise a bunch of money. Well, what we're talking about doing in regard to federal law isn't anything wildly crazy. You know, I'm talking about background checks. 98% of the American people believe that you should have a background check before you're able to purchase a firearm. So this has overwhelming support amongst the people in the United States of America, and we need to make sure that the elected officials understand that and are willing to do the work that they're sent to Washington to do.
In this particular case, the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department is saying that the gun used in this mass shooting was a semi-automatic handgun. That's a very generic, basic description. We don't know if it was modified or anything, but if that's all it is, that's a legal weapon in California. It's semi-automatic. It maybe had 9 bullets in it. That's plenty to do what happened here today, to go to one scene, 4 people were found dead, reload, go to a second scene, 3 people were found dead. In that situation, would a background check make a difference?
I don't know. As you point out, there's more that we don't know than what we do know. I heard the same report that it was a semi-automatic. We don't know if it was purchased legally. We don't know if the shooter was a prohibited individual, prohibited from owning a firearm. We don't know what the size of the magazine was. There's, as I say, there's more that we don't know than what we do know. But we also know that you can't legislate for every incident that happens. We need to have good laws on the books that allow law-abiding, stable individuals to have access to firearms, but keep people who shouldn't have firearms away from them. And if we do that, we can save a lot of lives. Will we save every life? You and I both know the answer to that, but that doesn't mean we stop trying, and that doesn't mean that we don't take the small victories that we can achieve.
Can you bring us up to date on what the current background check law is here in California?
Well, in California, it's pretty stringent. If you want to buy a firearm, you have to pass a background check. And then in California, there's a waiting period. After you pass that background check, you have to wait 10 days before you can pick up your firearm. The problem is it's not the same in every state. So people can go to other states and purchase firearms and bring them into California. We saw in the tragedy that happened in Southern California yesterday, that was a firearm that was probably illegal, or is illegal in California today. We don't know when that individual purchased it, but we know that it had an extended magazine, which is illegal in California. And the reality is, in other states, it's really easy to get firearms. And there's 33 states that only go by federal law, and federal law says that if you buy a gun from a licensed dealer, you have to undergo a background check. So in those states, you know, you can walk into a licensed dealer, try and purchase a firearm, and if you're found to be prohibited, you can walk out the door and go to the computer store next door, go on the computer and look up the same gun for sale and buy it from a private individual.
Congressman, as you know, the gun lobby always says when these things happen that this is not a gun issue, this is a mental health issue. We don't know about this particular case at this particular time, but in general, what else needs to be done nationally in terms of mental health?
Well, you know, we need to do a lot in regard to mental health, not just as it pertains to gun violence, but mental health Mental health costs us as taxpayers $1 trillion a year. We have there's nobody in this country, nobody watching this broadcast tonight that's not affected by mental health, either as an individual or because of a family member or a friend or the guy across the street. There's homeless issues that are tied to mental health, drug and alcohol addiction, spousal abuse, child abuse. It's just a terrible thing. And we put Band-Aids on mental health problems. The fact of the matter is we need to get ahead of the curve. We need to be doing extensive research on the brain to figure out what these problems are. We need to make that investment, and only in doing that will we ever get ahead of it. We don't have enough money to deal with all of the mental health Band-Aids that we use now, even if that was the solution. But we've got a lot of work to do in that regard. I don't know whether or not the individual that you're talking to me about tonight is in the category of mental illness or not, but well, I do know that more people who are mentally ill are victims than are perpetrators, but it's two separate issues.
Okay.
And as I said earlier, the legislation that I'm working on is to make sure that we check the individual who's trying to obtain a firearm to make sure they're not prohibited from owning a firearm, that they're not a danger to themselves or others. And if we're able to accomplish that, we can make a lot of headway.
Congressman Mike Thompson, thank you for your time and your insight. Let's hope you make some headway on all those issues. Thank you.